My boss looked at me with surprise and asked, "Why did you come in a taxi today? What happened to the car we gave you for your promotion?" Before I could say anything, my wife from HR smiled and said, "Her sister uses that car now." My boss went quiet for a moment. I could feel the weight of the silence, thickening in the air like the humidity before a storm. What happened next made me truly proud. It was 8:58 a.m., and I just walked into the glass-walled conference room at Scottsdale Tech, my heart already racing. The office buzzed with the low hum of quiet conversations as people set up their laptops and prepared for the leadership meeting. I should have been excited to be here, to show off my new role, to feel the fruits of all my hard work, but today I wasn't sure what I felt anymore. The moment I walked in, I could feel the eyes of my colleagues flicker to me. Alina, my boss, sat at the head of the table, her usual sharp professionalism in place, but her eyes were different today. There was concern beneath her calm exterior. And then there was Owen, standing next to her, his navy suit crisp and perfectly tailored. He looked the part of the HR director, standing tall with his burgundy tie, a quiet smile on his lips, pretending not to notice the tension radiating from me. We had left home together just 40 minutes earlier, our silence heavy with the unresolved weight of yet another morning where I had questioned whether this marriage was even mine anymore. Now, here I was, in front of my boss, with the weight of my life crumbling just beneath the surface. I'd been dreading this moment for weeks, this moment when Alina would finally ask about the company car. For weeks, I'd been taking taxis to work. I'd never told anyone why. It wasn't just the inconvenience, or the embarrassment of showing up late, because I couldn't get my own car together. It was the fact that my Audi, the pearl white Q5 with the caramel leather interior, was sitting unused in the driveway, because Jessica had given it to her sister Charlotte, without asking me first. I tried to push the thought away, the anger and hurt that had been simmering for days. But there it was. Elena's question hung in the air, sharp and probing. What happened to the car? I could hear the curiosity in her voice, but beneath it was something else, something like concern, or maybe judgment. I opened my mouth but no words came. I had practiced my answers in my head 100 times, the excuses I could give. I could mention the car's maintenance problems, or the long wait for parts, or that it was in the shop for a recall, but none of those explanations would satisfy Alina. And none of them would explain what was really going on, what had been going on for months, maybe even years. Then Owen spoke, his voice as casual as ever, like he was explaining the weather. "Her sister uses that car now," he said. There it was like a bullet through the silence. The words landed with a thud in the room. He hadn't even looked up from his phone when he said it. The nonchalance in his tone made my blood run cold. The silence that followed felt like it stretched on forever. Even though it couldn't have been more than 3 seconds. In those few seconds, I felt everything I had worked for, the promotion, the respect I had earned, start to slip away. My marriage, my career. Everything I had built seemed like it was collapsing under the weight of one careless sentence. Elena's eyes flicked from Owen to me, confusion flickering in her gaze. And then I saw it, just the tiniest shift in her expression. Her brows furrowed for a moment, and then she was back to her professional mask, her gaze steady and cool. I opened my mouth to speak, to somehow make this situation go away, but no words came. I felt as if the room had gone too quiet, like all the air had been sucked out of it. I had no idea how we had gotten here, how my life had become so entangled in lies and half-truths that even I didn't know where the truth began. It was at that moment, with the room so still, that I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to see before. This wasn't about a car. It wasn't about being petty or materialistic, though Jessica had made me feel like that every time I questioned her actions. This was about control, about how much of my life had been handed over without me even realizing it. I could feel the heat rising in my chest, the urge to defend myself, to explain that this wasn't just about a car. This was about my career, my dignity, and my place in this company. But instead of speaking, I just stood there, frozen, while Alina watched me with concern, her patience waiting for me to speak. And what happened next, what Alina said and how she handled the situation, would change everything. It would push me to take a stand for the first time in years. I couldn't stop replaying the moment in the conference room over and over again, the silence stretching out after Owen casually dropped that bomb about the car. It wasn't just that he'd given away company property without asking me, it was the way he said it, so offhand, like it was no big deal. And my boss Alina had just watched it unfold like it was business as usual. I sat at my desk in the open plan office, trying to focus on the new project I'd been assigned. The hum of the fluorescent lights above me did nothing to ease the pounding headache that had taken over. The team's chatter, usually comforting, felt distant now. I couldn't shake the tension in my chest, the pit that had settled in my stomach. For the past few weeks, I had been trying to ignore the creeping feeling that something wasn't right. It wasn't just the car, although that was the most obvious sign. It was the fact that I was losing myself, bit by bit, over things that used to matter. I had worked so hard to get to this point. The promotion to senior solutions architect was a huge deal. It was everything I'd been working toward for the past 5 years. But instead of feeling triumphant, all I felt was a gnawing emptiness. The moment I got the news about my promotion, I had expected everything to change, to finally feel like my efforts had paid off. But somehow, it only made things worse. The promotion should have been a cause for celebration. But that night when I got home and told Owen, his reaction wasn't what I'd imagined. "Don't brag about it too much," he had said, his voice flat. "People will think you're arrogant." He didn't even have my moment to enjoy what I had earned. And when the company threw a celebration dinner in my honor, it was Owen who gave the toast about my promotion. Owen who explained what my new role would be. The entire night was a blur, my smile stiff as I nodded through his speech, while all I wanted to do was scream, "This is my success, not yours." But I didn't. I sat there, feeling more like a prop than the accomplished professional I had worked so hard to become. And now, here I was, sitting in the office, the weight of everything pressing down on me. My Audi sat unused in the driveway, parked neatly in its spot, while Jessica drove it around like it was hers. I could almost hear her voice in my head now, calm, steady, insistent. "Charlotte really needs it for just a couple of days. She's got this big interview, and it's a long drive." And every time I hesitated to agree, Owen was there, backing her up. "You don't trust my family, do you?" That look he gave me, it always made my stomach twist. The guilt, the pressure, the silent accusations that I was somehow being unreasonable for wanting something as simple as my company car. When the first day turned into a second, then a third, and I still hadn't gotten my car back, I started to feel like I was losing control of everything. Each day, I let it slide, thinking it was temporary. But after a week, I couldn't deny it anymore. Owen had promised me the car would come back, but now it was clear that it wouldn't. Charlotte needed it for just a couple of days, and here I was, taking taxis to work and making excuses to everyone who asked. Even my assistant, Jennifer, had started to give me those looks, the kind you give someone who's falling apart but won't admit it. I remember the first time Jennifer asked, "Everything okay, Abigail?" It was a simple question, but it made me feel exposed. I could hear the concern in her voice, even though she tried to mask it. I didn't want to be the woman who couldn't handle her own life. I didn't want to be the one who always needed help. But in that moment, I realized that I wasn't just being a little bit late or forgetful. I was failing in ways that I couldn't fix with a smile or an apology. The worst part wasn't the car, or the taxi fare I was paying every day, or even the feeling that I was losing my grip. The worst part was the feeling of becoming smaller. Of letting Owen, of letting Jessica, make decisions for me without ever asking what I wanted. They didn't respect my needs or my boundaries, and I let them get away with it. It had started so subtly. Little compromises here and there. The credit card he opened in my name without asking. When I confronted him, he looked confused. "I thought you'd want the rewards points," he said, as if that was a valid reason to rack up $3,000 in charges I hadn't authorized. The vacation days he volunteered me for without checking my schedule. The dinners with his family where I felt like a stranger in my own home. Each time, I told myself it wasn't a big deal. Each time I backed down, telling myself I was being selfish for caring about these things. But looking back, I saw the pattern, the quiet erosion of my identity, the slow fading of my voice in my own life. And now, here I was, wondering how it had come to this. I stood up from my desk and walked to the window. The view of the city below felt like a distant world. I could hear the hum of the office behind me, but it felt muffled. Outside, the sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the streets. I watched as cars drove by, and for a brief moment, I thought about my Audi sitting at home. A luxury car I had earned, but had been given away without my consent. My stomach churned at the thought. I wasn't just losing the car. I was losing my sense of self, and as much as I tried to tell myself that it wasn't that big of a deal, deep down I knew it was. It was everything. The morning after the meeting with Alina, I stood in front of the mirror, staring at my reflection, trying to make sense of the mess my life had become. I had always prided myself on being a practical person, grounded in logic and reason. But today I couldn't shake the feeling that I was watching my life from a distance, like a stranger. My tie was too tight, and my shirt felt stiff, constricting around my neck. The house was still quiet, the silence that followed me everywhere these days. Even the coffee machine sat idle, untouched since Jessica had left for her sister's house yesterday. I couldn't bring myself to use it, didn't want to make the coffee she always made for herself. As I made my way to the kitchen, the stillness felt like a weight on my chest. I had made the decision to confront Jessica this morning. I had to. For weeks now I had been ignoring the glaring problem in our marriage, the one I kept pushing to the back of my mind, the car. The lies. The manipulation. But it was no longer about the car. It wasn't even about the company or the promotion anymore. It was about everything she had taken from me. I grabbed my bag and stepped out into the early morning light, the crisp air biting at my face as I headed for the driveway. I looked at the Audi parked in its spot, the gleaming white paint mocking me. It should have been my triumph. Instead it sat there, a symbol of everything I had lost. Everything Jessica had taken. The drive to the office was uneventful. The city was waking up, the streets full of people rushing to their own routines. I drove in silence, letting my thoughts swirl, wondering how we had gotten here. My marriage, once the foundation of my life, now felt like quicksand, pulling me under with every decision I didn't make. Every time I backed down, every time I put her needs above my own, every time I let her make decisions for me, I was sinking deeper. When I pulled into the parking garage at Scottsdale Tech, I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. It was just another day at work, another day where I would pretend to have it all together. But as I walked toward the elevator, I could feel the weight of the truth pressing down on me. Jessica had taken too much from me, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could ignore it. I barely noticed when I arrived at my desk. My mind kept drifting back to the conversation we had to have. The one that I had been putting off for too long. I hadn't expected it to go this far, but now I could feel the tension building. I couldn't go on like this. It was time to say something. But when I opened my email, I was distracted by a message from Jennifer, my assistant. She had sent me a list of updates for the day, but it was the subject line that caught my eye. Car issues. It was only 2 words. But they were enough to send a jolt of panic through me. She was referring to the Audi, of course. She knew I had been taking taxis to work for the past week, and I could only imagine the whispers that had started. I had been late a couple of times, and the team had noticed. Jennifer had probably noticed too, and now she was asking questions. I hated that she could see it. I hated that everyone could see it. I replied with a quick note, pretending everything was fine, but inside I was seething. Seething at myself, seething at Jessica for doing this to me. I couldn't let her control my life anymore. But how could I stand up to her when every time I tried, I felt like I was losing everything? The morning passed slowly. The hours dragged on, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was on the edge of something I couldn't control. When lunch finally rolled around, I couldn't even bring myself to eat. I just sat at my desk, my mind spinning with thoughts of how to confront Jessica. What would I even say to her? Could I even make her see what she had done, or had I let it go on for so long that it was too late? At one point Alina stopped by my desk to ask if I had time to go over some Q4 priorities. Her voice was soft, almost too soft, like she was walking on eggshells. She knew something was wrong. She had seen enough to know that the tension between Jessica and me was affecting my work. But Alina didn't know the half of it. She didn't know how deep the cracks in my marriage really went. We sat in her office, discussing numbers and deadlines, but I could barely focus. All I could think about was what would happen when I got home. Would Jessica be there, ready to explain herself? Or would she be gone, pretending nothing had happened? Either way, I knew the conversation was coming. I just didn't know if I was ready to face it. As the afternoon wore on, the weight of everything pressed down on me more and more. I felt like I was suffocating. I had to confront her. I had to tell her that I was done being controlled. That I was done being manipulated. But when I finally walked into the conference room for the meeting with Alina and the rest of the team, I realized that it wasn't just Jessica I had to face, it was myself. I had been letting her run the show for so long that I didn't even know who I was anymore. I had given up so much of myself. Thinking I was doing the right thing. Thinking I was being a good husband, a good provider. But the truth was I had lost everything in the process. And now, I had to find a way to take it all back. The meeting went by in a blur. My mind kept returning to the car, to Jessica's casual betrayal. But when Elena asked me to stay after the meeting, I knew this was it, the moment of truth, and I was no longer sure I was ready for it. The door to Elena's office clicked shut behind me, and I stood there for a moment, rooted to the spot. The conference room had emptied out, and now it was just the two of us, Elena and me, standing in the stillness, the weight of everything we had just discussed hanging heavy between us. I could feel the pulse of the fluorescent lights above, buzzing faintly, but everything else in the room felt suffocating. The air seemed too thick, the silence too loud. Elena. I started, my voice unsure, betraying the nerves I was trying to control. I didn't expect any of that. She nodded, her face still neutral, but I could see the concern in her eyes. I know, she said quietly. I could tell. You've been holding a lot in, Luke. You can't keep burying it, not anymore. I nodded, though I wasn't sure I agreed. Burying it had always been easier than confronting it. But the events of the past week had pushed me to a breaking point. The car, the lies, the manipulation, it all felt like it was crumbling. And for the first time, I wasn't sure I had the strength to hold it together. I ran my fingers through my hair, pushing back the wave of frustration building inside me. I don't know how it got this bad, I admitted, my voice faltering. I keep telling myself it's just a car, but it's more than that. It's Evan. Alina leaned back in her chair, her eyes studying me with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. She folded her arms across her chest, her gaze steady. Luke, I've been watching you for months. You've been shrinking. Your confidence is gone. You've let your life be controlled by Jessica, by your family, by everything around you, and now, it's showing in your work. It's affecting everything. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I'd known this was coming. I'd felt it in the quiet moments. When Jessica's demands had pushed me to agree to things I didn't want to. When I'd stayed silent at the dinner table while she ran the show. When I'd let her make decisions for me that I should have made myself. But hearing it from Alina, hearing how my life had been unraveling in front of me, felt like I was seeing it all for the first time. I didn't know how to stop. I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know how to tell her no. Every time I tried, I felt like I was the one who was wrong. She made me feel like I was being unreasonable. Selfish even. You're not selfish for wanting to take control of your own life, Luke. Alina said softly, her tone still firm but not unkind. You've let your relationship with Jessica dictate your choices for too long. And it's starting to cost you your career, your identity. It's not about the car. It's about you, Luke. You've been letting someone else run your life for so long that you don't even recognize yourself anymore. I sat there, the weight of her words sinking in. I had been letting Jessica make the rules. I had allowed her to take control of our lives, our decisions, and our marriage. I had been complicit, too afraid to stand up to her because I thought it would cost me everything, our home, our future, maybe even the love we had built. But as I sat there, I realized something I hadn't been able to admit before. I wasn't just losing my marriage. I was losing myself. I don't know how to fix this, I said, my voice trembling now. How do I take control again? How do I even start? Alina looked at me for a long moment, her gaze steady. It starts with one decision, Luke. One moment of clarity where you stop making excuses for her. Where you stop hiding behind the things you've convinced yourself are more important than your own well-being. It's about setting boundaries. About saying no. I blinked, surprised by the bluntness in her voice, but it felt like a wake-up call. But if I do that, if I stand up to her, everything changes, right? Alina nodded. Yes, it will. But that's the point, Luke. You've been hiding behind what you think is safe for too long. It's time to stop letting fear guide your choices. I couldn't help but laugh, though it was hollow. It's not just fear, I said, my mind racing through the last few weeks. I don't know who I am anymore. I'm not the person I used to be. She smiled, the expression warm but knowing. That's not true. You're still there, Luke. You just have to remember who you are. You've been so busy trying to keep the peace that you've forgotten what you need. You've forgotten what it feels like to fight for yourself. The silence stretched between us again, but this time, it felt different. There was something in her words, something that made me realize I had been living my life in a kind of fog. I'd been so focused on keeping the peace, on doing what was expected of me, that I had lost sight of the man I used to be, the man who had worked hard to earn everything he had. The man who deserved respect, who deserved to have a voice in his own life. And it hit me then, with brutal clarity. I had been too afraid of standing up to Jessica, of challenging her in any way, because I thought it would destroy everything we had built together. But now, I could see that the real destruction had already begun. The destruction wasn't in standing up to her. The destruction was in letting her control me, letting her manipulate me into thinking I had no choices left. Elena, I need to talk to her, I said, the decision forming in my mind. I need to tell her the truth. Then do it, Alina said, her voice firm. But do it for yourself, Luke, not for her. And don't be afraid of the fallout. Sometimes standing up for yourself is the hardest thing you'll ever do, but it's the only way to truly take control of your life again. I nodded, my heart pounding. This wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't going to be painless, but it was the only way forward. The only way to stop disappearing into someone else's life and start living my own. As I left Alina's office, the weight on my chest felt lighter. There was still a long road ahead, but for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was finally taking the first step toward reclaiming who I was. The drive home that evening felt like it took forever. The streets blurred outside the car window, the late afternoon sunlight casting long shadows across the pavement. I kept thinking about what I had to do next. The conversation with Alina had been a wake-up call, but now that I was sitting in the car, on my way home, everything I had planned felt heavy in my chest. It wasn't just the car, the promotion, or the little lies I'd been telling myself. It was everything. The realization hit me hard as I pulled into the driveway. Jessica was inside. I knew she'd be waiting for me. She always was, waiting like she was the one in control of everything. I had let her have that power over me for too long. And I didn't know how I could face her now. How could I confront her without completely tearing everything apart? I took a deep breath as I parked the car. The house looked the same as it always did, neat, quiet, almost too perfect. But it wasn't home anymore. It hadn't felt like home for a while. The sound of the front door opening echoed in the stillness, and I saw Jessica standing there, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. She didn't have to say anything. The tension in the air was enough. She said simply, like we weren't about to have the conversation that could change everything. I nodded, my throat tight. We need to talk. She stepped aside, motioning for me to come in. The house smelled like freshly brewed coffee, but the warm scent did nothing to ease the cold feeling spreading through my chest. I followed her into the living room, but instead of sitting down, I just stood there, my hands shoved deep into my pockets. About the car. I said, the words finally coming out. It's been 3 weeks, Jessica. I've asked you for it back, but you've been ignoring me. She didn't seem surprised by my anger. She just raised an eyebrow, the same look she gave me when she thought I was being unreasonable. You know Charlotte needed it. Her Jeep broke down. She needed the car for the interview. I told you it would only be for a few days. That was 3 weeks ago. I raised my voice without meaning to. You've had it for way too long, and every time I asked you for it back, you just... I cut myself off, frustrated. How could I explain this without sounding like I was overacting? Without sounding like I had let everything slide for too long? Her expression softened, but it didn't reach her eyes. It's just a car, Luke. Why are you making this such a big deal? You've got plenty of other things to focus on. Work, the promotion. Why don't you just let it go? I stared at her, my mouth hanging open. It wasn't just about the car. It was never about the car. It was about everything she had been doing to me, the way she had taken control of my life, my decisions, my career, and turned me into someone I didn't even recognize. Just a car. I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. It's company property, Jessica. I'm responsible for it. It's part of my promotion. And you've been treating it like it's yours to give away whenever you feel like it. You've been treating me like I'm not even here. She blinked, the shock on her face fleeting. What are you talking about? You're making this so dramatic. I shook my head, unable to stop the frustration from pouring out. You don't get it, do you? You think I'm being dramatic, but I'm not. This is everything. You've been making decisions for both of us for so long. I don't even know who I am anymore. I've been pretending everything is fine, but I can't keep doing that. Not anymore. Jessica's eyes flashed with something sharp, something I hadn't seen in a long time. Don't act like you're the only one with problems. You think it's easy living with someone who's so obsessed with his job, that he can't even be here when I need him. You think it's easy to always have to tiptoe around your career, around your success, to make sure you're not upset. I felt a rush of anger flood through me, but I bit my lip, trying to hold it together. It's not about your job, Jessica. It's about respect. You've been treating me like I'm invisible, like I don't get a say in our life, and I'm done letting you make decisions for me. Her face hardened, the anger in her eyes now clear. Is that what this is? You're finally standing up to me. Because it's a little late for that, don't you think? I'm not doing this because I'm angry, Jessica. I'm doing this because I've been drowning in this marriage. I've been letting you make me smaller and smaller until I couldn't even recognize myself anymore. And I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. I deserve better than this. For the first time in months, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, a crack in her calm exterior. But she quickly masked it, her lips tightening into a thin line. So what now? You want a divorce? The word hung in the air between us like a bomb waiting to go off. My heart pounded in my chest, the realization sinking in. This was the moment I had been avoiding for so long. The truth was, I didn't know what was next. But I did know that I couldn't keep living this way. I don't know, I said, my voice hoarse. But I can't keep pretending like everything is fine when it's not. I need to figure out who I am again. And I can't do that if I'm still being controlled by you. Jessica stepped back, her hands clenched at her sides. You think this is about control? You think I've been controlling you? Her voice shook with anger, but there was something else beneath it. Something I couldn't quite place. I've been trying to hold this marriage together while you've been disappearing into your career. You've let work consume you, and now you want to blame me. I swallowed hard, the lump in my throat making it difficult to speak. This isn't just about work, Jessica. It's about you treating me like I'm not enough. Like nothing I do matters unless it's what you want. And I'm tired of it. I'm tired of feeling like I'm nothing. She opened her mouth, but I didn't give her the chance to speak. You've been making decisions for both of us, and I've let you. But not anymore. It's time for me to start living my life for me. Not for you, not for anyone else, just for me. The silence that followed felt like a bomb had gone off in the room. Neither of us moved, neither of us spoke. For the first time in years, the truth hung in the air between us, raw and undeniable. This was the breaking point. The moment everything changed. The following days felt like a blur, each one blending into the next. I had done it. I had finally spoken my truth, confronted Jessica, and somehow in the process, torn down the walls I had been building around myself for years. But I wasn't sure what came next. The fight with Jessica had left me emotionally drained, and although part of me felt liberated, the other part, the part that had been so deeply buried, was terrified of the fallout. I spent the next few days at work trying to focus, trying to keep up with my responsibilities, but every time I stepped into the office, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. My colleagues were more cautious around me than usual, exchanging glances when they thought I wasn't looking. It was like they could feel the tension radiating from me, and I wasn't sure if they were uncomfortable because they knew what was going on or if they were just waiting for me to break. Elena noticed it too. She hadn't said anything yet, but I could tell she was keeping an eye on me. When she called me into her office for a one-on-one meeting, I couldn't help but feel a knot form in my stomach. Luke, how are you holding up? She asked as I sat down across from her. Her tone was gentle, but her eyes held a quiet intensity, as if she could see right through me. I'm fine, I said quickly, but my voice betrayed me. It wasn't fine. Nothing about this was fine. But I couldn't admit that. Not yet. Not when I still wasn't sure what I was doing. Alina studied me for a moment longer before nodding. I get it. You're going through a lot right now. I've seen it in your work. You're distracted and I know why. She paused, letting the silence settle between us. I swallowed hard, unsure where this conversation was going. Was she going to push me harder to confront what I had been avoiding? Was she going to tell me I was handling it wrong? I'm not going to pretend that what you're dealing with isn't affecting your performance, Luke. Elena continued. I don't want to pressure you, but you need to take care of yourself. Your work matters, yes. But you matter more. I could feel the heat of her words settle deep inside me, her understanding touching something raw. I nodded, but I didn't know how to express the gratitude I felt. How could I put into words the relief of having someone finally acknowledge what I had been living with? I'm trying, I said quietly. I really am. She smiled gently, her eyes softening. You don't have to do it alone, Luke. You've got people here who care about you, and you've got me if you ever need to talk. Just don't lose yourself in all this. I can see how it's been affecting you. You're better than this, better than the version of you that's been hiding. Her words struck a chord I hadn't realized was still there. For the first time, someone was telling me it was okay to not have everything figured out. It was okay to ask for help. I will, I said, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. Thanks, Alina. Really. She gave me one last look, a look that was both firm and caring. Take the time you need. You deserve it. That night after work, I went back to the apartment. The silence there felt different now. It wasn't the silence of two people who had grown comfortable in their routine, but the silence of something broken, something unfinished. I couldn't help but replay the conversation with Jessica in my mind, each word echoing in the quiet of the room. It had been so much harder than I had expected. Confronting Jessica, standing up for myself, admitting everything that had been wrong, it wasn't easy. But I knew now that it was the only way forward. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if Jessica would come around, if she would accept what I had said, or if this would be the end of us. But as I lay in bed that night, I realized something. I was no longer afraid of the unknown. I was no longer afraid of what came next because I had taken control, finally. I had stopped being invisible in my own life. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. The next morning, I walked into the office with my head held a little higher. There was still a lot to work through, but I was starting to feel the shift in myself, the change I had been avoiding for so long. The tension in the office was still there, but it didn't matter anymore. Alina caught me as I was walking back to my desk. I'm proud of you, Luke, she said, her voice low but sincere. I can see the change in you. It's not easy, but you're doing it. You're moving forward. Her words made something inside me shift. I wasn't the same person who had walked into this building just a week ago. I was someone different, someone who could face whatever came next, no matter how difficult. Because for the first time, I wasn't going to let fear or doubt control me anymore. I was ready to rebuild. By the time I left work the next evening, the city felt different. The air was cooler, and there was a quietness around me that hadn't been there before. Maybe it was because I had been so focused on pushing forward, on moving past all the chaos in my life. But today, as I walked down the street, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to shift again. When I walked into my apartment, it was still quiet, too quiet. The kind of silence that made every little sound feel amplified. I set my bag down on the kitchen counter, but I couldn't bring myself to take off my shoes or even unpack. It was like my body was still on alert, waiting for something. For what I wasn't sure yet, but then the phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, my stomach twisting when I saw the name, Jessica. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the screen. I hadn't expected to hear from her after everything. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to keep pushing forward with this new life I was trying to build. But another part of me, the part I couldn't quite shake off, knew that I needed to face whatever this was. I needed closure. I picked up the phone and swiped the screen, bringing it to my ear. Luke, she said, her voice sounding quieter than I expected. We need to talk. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut, but I wasn't sure why. I had just seen her a few days ago. We had said everything that needed to be said, right? Why was she calling me now? I let out a slow breath, trying to keep my cool. About what? I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. There was a pause on the other end of the line before she spoke again. About the car. About everything. My heart skipped a beat. There it was, the car. The thing that had started all of this. But it wasn't really about the car, was it? It was never just about the car. It was everything that had been building up between us for years. Luke, I don't know how to fix this. I know I've been difficult. But I've been thinking a lot about what you said. Jessica continued, her words faltering a little. I didn't realize how much I was holding you back. Or maybe I did, but I didn't know how to stop. I'm not saying I've got it all figured out, but I'm trying, Luke. Her honesty took me by surprise, knocking the wind out of me. I didn't know how to react. The same woman who had manipulated my every move, who had controlled me for so long, was now apologizing. Was this some kind of act, a desperate attempt to get me back into her orbit? Or was this the beginning of something real? I could feel the anger rising in my chest again, but this time, it wasn't the same. It wasn't the rage that had fueled all those years of bitterness. It was something different, something heavy. Like all the weight I had carried with me for so long was finally starting to lift. I don't know if we can fix this, Jessica. I said slowly, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. I don't know if I even want to. I've been doing this for years, trying to make it work, trying to make you happy. But I've lost myself in the process. And I can't keep doing that. I know. She whispered. I don't want to lose you, Luke. I've always thought I could fix everything. But I see now that I've been the one breaking it. I don't know if that means we can ever go back to what we were, but I want to try. Not for the car, not for anything else. Just for us. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of her words settle deep in my chest. I had spent so much time thinking I could fix everything for her. I had spent years pretending I didn't need fixing myself. But hearing her say those words, hearing her admit she had been the one breaking everything, it felt like the first real step toward healing. But was it enough? I need time, I said softly, my hand tightening around the phone. I need time to figure out what I want, Jessica. What I need. And I need you to understand that this isn't going to be easy. I'm not going to just fall back into the same pattern. She didn't say anything for a long moment. I could hear her breathing, like she was trying to find the right words. Finally, she spoke, her voice quiet and almost broken. I understand, Luke, I really do, but please don't shut me out completely. I'm here, okay? Whenever you're ready. I nodded even though she couldn't see me. The words she said felt like a promise, but I wasn't sure if they were enough to rebuild the trust we had lost. I wasn't sure if anything would ever be enough again. But maybe that was okay. I'll think about it, I said, and with that, I hung up the phone. I stood there for a long time, the silence in the apartment feeling like a weight on my shoulders. I wasn't sure where this was going. I wasn't sure if Jessica and I could ever go back to what we were, or if we even should. But in that moment, I knew one thing for sure. I had finally started living for myself. And that was enough. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of quiet moments. I went through the motions, eating dinner, cleaning up, checking my work emails, but none of it felt real. My mind kept drifting back to the conversation with Jessica, to the words she had said. Was I ready to let go of everything we had built together? Could I really move on, or was I just trying to convince myself I could? I didn't have the answers. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to. When I woke up the next morning, the weight I had carried for so long didn't feel quite as heavy. Maybe it was because I had taken control, or maybe it was because I had stopped waiting for someone else to fix me. Either way, I felt a little lighter. And I was ready to see what came next. The day after the meeting with Alina, I walked into the office with a new sense of purpose. The air felt different, lighter, and I wasn't sure if it was just me or if the whole world was changing around me. There was still a lot of uncertainty in the air, but there was something else too, an undeniable feeling that I was finally moving forward, not just physically, but emotionally. I didn't know exactly where I was going, but I knew I wasn't looking back anymore. The building seemed quieter than usual as I entered, but that only made everything feel more intense. I could hear my footsteps echoing through the lobby, the sound sharp in the otherwise still morning. When I passed by the break room, I noticed a few of my colleagues standing by the coffee machine, talking in hushed tones. They looked up when I walked in, and for a moment, I felt the weight of their eyes on me. But this time, I didn't shrink away, I didn't let the discomfort make me feel small. I stood taller, keeping my focus straight ahead as I walked to my desk. I didn't need their approval anymore. I wasn't doing this for anyone else. I was doing it for me. As the day went on, I could feel the change in how people interacted with me. Some of them still hesitated, unsure of what to say, but there was a shift in the air, a recognition that I wasn't the same person I had been. And that gave me a strange sense of power, though it wasn't the kind I had ever sought before. It was quiet power, the kind that came from finally standing up for myself. By mid-afternoon, I had settled back into my usual rhythm at work, and just as I was about to send off an important email, my phone buzzed. I didn't have to look at the screen to know who it was. The name that flashed there was the one I had been avoiding, the one that had caused so much turmoil. It was Jessica. I stared at the screen for a moment, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. I wasn't sure what she wanted now. Hadn't we said everything that needed to be said? The last conversation had been difficult, but it felt like there was still so much left unsaid, so many pieces of our past that still needed to be addressed. Could we truly move past all of this? I didn't know. With a deep breath, I swiped the screen to answer hello. Luke, she said softly, her voice carrying a mix of hesitation and something deeper I couldn't quite place. I just wanted to check in. I've been thinking about everything. About how you're handling all of this. I'm sorry if I made it harder for you. I was silent for a moment, taking in her words. There was again, the sincerity I hadn't expected. Was it real though? Could I trust it? Was this her way of trying to win me back, or was it something else? I'm not sure what you're expecting from me, I said, my voice steady. We've said everything, Jessica. I can't go back to the way things were. But I can't pretend it didn't hurt, either. Her silence on the other end was heavy, and I wondered what she was thinking. I know, she said finally, her voice breaking slightly. I want you to know I'm not the person I was before. I'm not perfect, Luke. But I am trying. I've been talking to people, trying to understand where I went wrong. I clenched my jaw, the words stirring something inside me. It wasn't easy to hear. The fact that she was trying to change, to face the truth of her actions, made everything more complicated. I wanted to be angry, to tell her that it was too late, that the damage had already been done. But as I listened to her, I felt something shift in me again. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But maybe, just maybe, it was the start of something different. Thank you for saying that, I said quietly. But I need more than words, Jessica. I need time. I need space to figure this out for myself. I understand, she whispered, and I could almost hear the sadness in her voice. But won't push you anymore. But I hope that someday, you can find it in you to forgive me. I felt a lump form in my throat at her words. Was I ready to forgive her? I wasn't sure. But I knew one thing: I had to forgive myself first. I had spent so long thinking I wasn't enough, thinking I wasn't worthy of anything better than what I had been given. But now, I was starting to see things differently. I was starting to see that I deserved more. I don't know what will happen next, I said softly. But I'm doing what I need to do now. She was quiet for a moment, and then she spoke again. I'll be here when you're ready. I won't go anywhere. With that, I ended the call. It wasn't closure, not in the way I had always imagined. But it was a step forward, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was walking in the right direction. The next few days felt like a slow but steady climb. At work, I was focused, more present than I had been in months. The projects I had put off, because of all the distractions, were finally moving forward, and I felt a sense of accomplishment that had eluded me for so long. I wasn't just going through the motions anymore, I was living. Then, on a Friday afternoon, Alina called me into her office. She had a look on her face that was hard to read, but I could tell there was something she wanted to say. Luke, she began, as I sat down across from her. I've been thinking about you. About your work, about everything. And I just want you to know that I see you. And I'm proud of you. Her words took me by surprise, and I didn't know how to respond. I had been so focused on moving forward that I hadn't even realized how much I needed to hear that. Thank you, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I'm trying to be better, Alina. I'm really trying. She nodded, her eyes warm. I can see it, and I think you're ready for more. I've been talking to the team, and we all agree that you deserve the next step. We're creating a new position, Luke. VP of Solutions Architecture. My breath caught in my chest. Was she serious? VP, are you sure? I stammered. I mean, after everything. Alina smiled, her eyes steady. You've earned it. Your work speaks for itself. This is yours if you want it. I sat there for a moment, trying to absorb what she was saying. VP. It felt surreal, but in the best possible way. For the first time in years, I felt like everything was finally falling into place. Not because of Jessica, not because of anyone else, but because of me. I'll take it, I said, the words feeling like a declaration, like a promise to myself. And with that, I knew that everything had changed. I wasn't just moving forward anymore. I was thriving. As I walked out of Alina's office, I could feel a new sense of purpose filling me. I was going to take this chance, this opportunity to build something I had always deserved. I had learned so much about myself in the past few months. I had learned that I could survive, I could thrive, and I could rebuild. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. And as the sun set over the city that evening, casting a golden glow across the skyline, I realized something else, and I had finally found peace. Real, honest peace. And nothing, not even my past, could take that away from me.